Hello, everyone. Welcome to Diplomatic Commentary. As Trump initiates a tariff war, China's external environment is changing. Previously, southern countries that trusted U.S. President Biden intended to distance themselves from China, but recently they have all returned to the fold. At the end of April, at the invitation of the Chinese side, Kenyan President William Ruto began a 5-day official visit to China. During the 5-day visit, Ruto sought funding support for two key infrastructure projects. One involves extending the standard gauge railway to connect with Uganda at Malaba, which is crucial for regional trade. The other is a major highway project connecting the Rift Valley region to western Kenya. Since taking office in September 2022, Ruto has visited China twice for multilateral activities, the first being to attend the Belt and Road Forum in October 2023. The second time was in September last year to attend the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation Summit. Foreign media analysis suggests that this state visit marks Ruto's departure from his initial pro-Western stance, which also contrasts sharply with his statements during the presidential campaign. Analysts say that although the Ruto administration has seized opportunities to strengthen ties with the United States and Europe after taking office, however, the failure to secure funding is evident, coupled with the challenges brought by the U.S. tariff war, which are reasons for Kenya's recent overtures to China. Western countries, which frequently hype up competition with China, also view Kenya as a bridgehead for expanding influence in Africa. In 2023, the European Union signed a historic trade agreement with Kenya. This move to increase the flow of goods between the two markets, is a significant step by the EU to strengthen competition with China. Last May, Ruto also became the first African national leader in 15 years to make a state visit to the United States, where he received a high-level reception. Just the month after his visit to Washington, the US officially designated Kenya as a major non-NATO ally in Africa. At that time, CNN pointed out, "Today, Africa has become a central testing ground for the competition between the two major economies, China and the United States, for influence." The US arranged this visit, one of the core reasons being to counter China's expanding influence in Africa. However, Kenya is now undergoing a strategic shift. According to Cavins, a researcher at the Nairobi-based Institute of International Relations, this is due to the traditional ally, the United States, imposing trade tariffs and withdrawing aid. Ruto is seeking new market project financing and investors. He mentioned that currently, in 3 aspects, China seems to be the best choice for Kenya's port development. For China, Ruto's visit is seen as a symbolic victory. Cavin stated that Kenya, especially under Ruto's leadership, has largely been viewed as aligned with the United States. Amid the escalating geopolitical and trade tensions between China and the United States, hosting Ruto in China is a symbolic victory. From several observations, firstly, Kenyan President Ruto is a pro-Western African politician. Coupled with Biden's efforts alongside the EU, Japan, and South Korea to weaken China's influence in Africa, Ruto has implemented unfriendly measures towards China since taking office. For example, disrupting the major railway project between the port of Mombasa and the capital Nairobi. Secondly, within Kenya, Western politicians have also influenced public opinion, stirring up the so-called debt trap brought by China. As developing countries follow the US's lead in distancing themselves, cooperation with China and Chinese investment naturally decrease. Thirdly, Biden's style of forming alliances. This is substantial support which was never seen throughout the 4-year term. As a result, after Trump took office, not only did he overturn all the additional aid from the Biden era, but he also halted support for U.S. foreign aid altogether, making the U.S. appear unreliable in the eyes of developing countries. The conclusion is that many Western scholars expect that Trump's policies, such as the tariff war and reduction of foreign aid, will impact the global South, will push them towards China, and this situation will soon emerge. On the other hand, China is the only major country that dares to say no to the unreasonable tariffs imposed by the United States and retaliate, which has shaken the perception of many countries. However, due to US bullying, not many countries dare to openly support China. Recently, the situation has begun to change. During a meeting with Foreign Minister Wang Yi, Brazilian President Lula expressed admiration for China's firm and powerful countermeasures against reciprocal tariffs. China's righteous actions have gained widespread support. Irresponsible unilateral actions by certain countries should be collectively resisted. However, Brazil has expressed its willingness to work with China to achieve greater success in the BRICS mechanism. By gathering the strength of multilateralism, advocating for free trade, defending international rules, maintaining world peace, and achieving common development, we will never allow might to prevail over international justice. In response, Wang Yi stated that China firmly opposes unilateral bullying actions, not only to safeguard its own legitimate rights and interests, but also to protect the common interests of developing countries and uphold international fairness and justice. At this critical juncture in history, facing challenges and adversities, China will remain steadfast and strengthen its foundation, while also enhancing cooperation with BRICS and other Global South countries. Adhering to multilateralism, upholding international rules, and striving to bring such new hope to the world and new opportunities for peace. Laura is the first major country to openly express support for China. As the host of the BRICS, D countries, Brazil, although unable to issue a joint statement at the recently concluded foreign ministers' meeting, the lack of a joint statement was mainly due to Egypt and Ethiopia opposing the elevation of South Africa's status in the United Nations. This is an internal competition within Africa, but there is opposition. Regarding the trade war, under Brazil's coordination, all countries have reached a consensus. Although other countries did not explicitly name names, they all oppose the trade war initiated by the United States. In fact, South American countries, including Brazil, have found space for their own development amid the China-US trade war. For example, Brazil's agriculture is one of the direct beneficiaries after the China-US rivalry. China's countermeasures against the US were well prepared and precise, aiming to make the US feel the pain. For instance, China not only stopped buying American soybeans, corn, and other agricultural products, but also blocked American agricultural traders from using South American countries to disguise the origin of their products. The channel for American agricultural products to change their origin after passing through South America and then being sold to China was cut off. China strengthened the regulation of soybean imports and collaborated with major South American soybean countries like Brazil and Argentina to build the world's first blockchain traceability platform, blocking the flow of American soybeans with altered origins. Although the quarantine time is a bit longer than before, it is managed through import diversification and technological innovation. Dual engines drive this effort? China is systematically reducing its dependence on the United States, reshaping the global soybean and corn supply chain landscape. To completely block the loophole of origin alteration, data from every batch of imported soybeans from planting to transportation is included in a digital archive. This includes 12 key pieces of information such as GPS coordinates of the planting site, harvest time, and shipping vessel trajectories. This data is uploaded in real time to a blockchain FOSS system. A more refined system uses protein spectral codes. Along with soil isotope characteristics, these two technologies accurately identify soybean genes. Due to soil characteristics, soybeans from the US Midwest generally have a protein content higher than 35.1%. In contrast, South American soybeans are usually below 34%, with only a 0.7 percentage point difference, becoming a core parameter for algorithm identification. After the tariff war began in April 2025, a batch labeled as 300,000 tons of Argentine soybeans triggered an alert due to excessive protein levels. Upon inspection, it was discovered that they were actually from the US. Original burlap sacks. The core loophole that led to a full refund was in the logistics tracking. Chinese customs introduced spatio-temporal breakthrough analysis technology, or KIDSITE, to monitor IoT data from 2,300 global ports in real time. In March 2025, a cargo ship labeled as operating on the Brazil-China route triggered a system alert. The signal indicated that it had stayed on the Mississippi River in the United States for 72 hours, loading 200,000 tons. Brazilian soybeans were confirmed to be of US origin. Similar quantum tracking also identified 3 gray routes, silky-quants, including from the Mississippi River to Brazil's Santos port, from the Gulf of Mexico to Buenos Aires, Argentina, and directly across the Pacific to Haiphong port in Vietnam. The transparency of blockchain has rendered traditional logistics disguises completely ineffective. In addition to technological measures, Chinese customs have simultaneously upgraded their regulatory system, implementing a dual random inspection mechanism. Both the selection of a batch of goods for inspection and the assignment of an inspector are randomly allocated by the system, eliminating any human intervention in cases of violations. Additionally, all results are publicly disclosed on the official website, creating a strong deterrent. For example, in 2024, a batch of soybeans from Brazil triggered an in-depth inspection because its funding rate closely matched samples from the Midwest of the United States. The involved trader's financial chain was fully traced, ultimately facing hefty fines and a credit downgrade. An industry insider remarked with a sigh. Nowadays, are there cameras at the loading ports? Everything is connected to the internet, so any tampering is like walking into a trap. Besides Brazil, China is establishing long-term procurement mechanisms with countries like Ukraine and Argentina. The China-Europe Railway has already reduced the transportation cycle from Ukraine to China to 20 days, benefiting the import of categories like corn and peas. As for Argentina, it relies on its soybean crushing capacity to export processed products like soybean meal to China, thereby bypassing the dependency on US soybeans from the source. Meanwhile, Chinese companies are also actively participating in the construction of logistics hubs like Brazil's Santos port, increasing the annual freight capacity to 14 million tons, further ensuring supply stability. At the same time, several companies have stated that their reliance on US raw materials has significantly decreased. For instance, a representative from New Hope Group revealed that in 2024, the company's imports of raw materials from the US will account for less than 2% of their annual usage. Similarly, Yi Haikeri also mentioned this. Regarding raw materials, South American soybeans have indeed had a bountiful harvest. China's national reserves of soybeans and domestic soybeans have also increased, reducing the need to rely on US imports. Wheat, corn, and rice are primarily self-sufficient domestically, with imports accounting for a small proportion. For the few that need to be imported, they can be sourced from regions like the Black Sea to meet demand. In addition to external adjustments, China's agricultural system is also internally advancing supply optimization. The Great Island Revitalization Plan advances, with domestic soybean production increasing from 12 million tons 10 years ago to over 20 million tons after 2022, raising the self-sufficiency rate to 18%. After seeing the various departments in China and their different response measures, it's no wonder that American farmers lament that China has long been prepared and that life in China goes on as usual without American agricultural products. American media also anticipate that American agricultural products will face a full-blown crisis, with orders from China being continuously cancelled. American farmers might lose, or even permanently lose, China as a crucial and largest market.